Hello there.
Welcome, Gothamites, to another episode of the Arkham Sessions. My name is Brian Ward. With me, as always, the psychologist of the superheroes, superheroines, and supervillains of Gotham City, and now a galaxy far, far away, Dr. Drea Letamendi. Hello, Drea.
Hi, Brian.
Seems like a lot has happened in the last couple of weeks since our last episode on Attack of the Clones.
What's really weird is that we're watching, I mean, maybe not weird, but coincidental, is that we're watching the Star Wars prequel films, the trilogy, and also watching the last three of the new Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney Plus. And the, people say that George Lucas loves the symphony of kind of the balance of everything, like having the beginning and ends balance. And I can't imagine this being any different. It just fits so well together. No, you disagree. I let me just say, like, I have been enjoying how we've been watching the prequel films.
You mean with the projector?
No. I mean how we've actually been watching them, and also kind of in a tandem, intersecting way, splicing it in with these episodes of Obi-Wan. It's it's different.
Yeah, it is different. And if you remember, the last time we saw Revenge of the Sith, with the exception of just the other night, we literally cut in the last few episodes of Clone Wars so that it all worked, especially the whole Order 66 sequence worked in tandem with the Attack of the Clones, the Clone Wars TV series. And that was a unique experience as well. So basically what we're learning is it's just a really good idea to break up these movies with other pieces of material. Is that what you're saying?
That's actually a really good point. It's a huge universe, and
it's a very small universe, though. It's a very, very small universe.
When these things happen, like Order 66, when there's essentially a huge coup, there's this huge disruption in the sociopolitical climate in Star Wars. All these things happen at the same time. And it is Star Wars. So it's very much... steeped in intergalactic warfare.
That is true. You mentioned Obi-Wan, and if you go over to our Patreon right now, there is a poll up. Do you want us to cover the Kenobi series as part of this show? Now, the beauty of this question is you're literally deciding what we cover in our next episode, because the Kenobi series would literally be next in the lineup between Attack of the Clone or the prequels. The prequels always have the worst.
Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith, and I guess our next one would be because the patrons decided that we were going to cover Solo and
Rogue One.
So the next one would be Solo. So I guess really the question is, do you want us to cover Kenobi next? Do you want us to talk about these 6 episodes in the Disney Plus series? And I think a couple of weeks, that'll give you enough time to catch up or binge if you haven't already. So run over to patreon.com, and $3 will get you an opportunity to vote. Let us know what you think.
Look, for people who are like, you're going to do it, that's not even true.
Oh, we have literally thought we were going to do things before, and the patrons have said, No, you're going to do other things. Some of the things you've heard have been because our plans did not go the way we thought they would. I have a question from a listener who just sent us a message over at Facebook. Peter
So
asked,
this can't be good.
because it's on Facebook. Peter asked a completely unrelated question, but I thought it was something that was fun.
Okay.
He simply said, thoughts, and then gave me a link to a Guardian article that is titled, Amazon's Alexa Could Turn Dead Loved Ones' Voices into Digital Assistant. Technology promises ability to make the memories last by mimicking the voice of anyone it hears.
Yeah.
Drea, I'm curious, as a psychologist, from your perspective, what are the benefits and the pitfalls of a digital assistant whose AI now mimics the sound of a loved one's voice? And this kind of actually ties into Kenobi to some degree behind the scenes. And do you think it's a good idea?
Look, I've been thinking about this technology or technological advancement for a while, actually, since the article came out. I've been thinking about this.
Oh, so you've seen this article?
Yeah, I
before.
have. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a great question. On the one hand, the ability to have that familiar, comforting voice be in your home. And for some people, that's a close family member, maybe a relative, maybe a parent, depending on how the technology actually works. I imagine you may have to decide ahead of time. I'm not 100% sure. Mm-hmm. But that could be a source of great comfort and healing for people who are still working on consolidating the loss, the story of loss around somebody close to them. Mm-hmm. I can imagine that in some instances it might be somewhat, I don't know, the word I'm looking for is upsetting or distressing if you're not yet ready to separate, to kind of disentangle the concepts of that person actually being gone and this being a digital replacement for them. This is not like a Jedi ghost occasionally coming into your life and giving you advice and telling you things that you want to hear. This is this is like Alexa saying the news to you. Mm-hmm. This is getting the time, the weather, and so forth.
But it would be grandma giving you.
It would. So for some, it could be actually quite comforting and egosyntonic is the word I'm looking for, which means we've used that word on the show before. It basically means that the experience is fulfilling and it's in alignment with somebody's psychology in a very positive way. Something that would be possibly upsetting or triggering for someone, I think that would be more of an issue. But it's a great question because notice I'm not saying this is going to be a maladaptive concept or a maladaptive piece of technology. It could actually be very helpful for us.
So how long, and I realize it differs based on the individual, but how long before something like this becomes unhealthy to a person who, and I mean, we're not just talking about loved ones that have passed. We might also be talking about, an ex or a best friend, or there are a lot of negative things that this sort of technology could be used for. Mimicking someone's voice synthetically. But
yeah.
But how long do you think would be acceptable for the average person to be listening to a past loved one? Creating their shopping list for them.
Look, there's multiple examples of grieving family members staying staying close to their videos, their audio recordings, the things that they've kept. In fact, watching those videos over and over again, listening to those voice messages, the text, looking at the text messages, whatever. Those remnants of those relationships, I don't think those should be necessarily pathologized. That connection should not necessarily be pathologized.
Right.
But of course, anything at an extreme level should be worrisome. Is that person replacing actual relationships with this digital recording that does shopping lists and weather and the time? I mean, I can't imagine that's a possibility, but that would be concerning.
Yeah. The reason I had said that this sort of ties into Kenobi a little bit is my understanding from a couple of articles online, and I don't know if this is actually true, but through an insider that we know at Lucasfilm adjacent, and a couple of articles online. My understanding is that James Earl Jones did not actually voice technically the character of Darth Vader in the new Kenobi series. That it is his voice, but
he's credited.
But that it is an AI trained with James Earl Jones's voice, so that he's still credited, but he didn't actually have to do the performance of a significantly younger James Earl Jones performing the voice of, the crisp voice of Darth Vader. It's not a sound alike. It's not someone who they got who sounds close enough to Darth Vader. You can't give that voice to a live action character, it seems, or a live action performance of Darth Vader, other than James Earl Jones. So they took his voice and created it. And so again, this is that AI technology that's and there are actually, you can go online and you can find websites that will do this. They'll have you read like a paragraph that makes seemingly no sense. But then anything you type afterward will sound just like you.
That's cool.
And apparently they did that with the character of Iceman, played by Val Kilmer in the new Top Gun movie. At the end, when he, as he says, he speaks to Tom Cruise's Maverick character, and that was apparently an AI generated voice as well. So it's all very interesting. Peter's follow-up question was, have you considered analyzing Black Mirror? So this might...
I knew there was a catch to that.
Yeah,
I love Black Mirror. It's one of my favorite shows, actually.
Yeah. Could you imagine us actually sitting
I
down
would.
to...
I would love to talk about Black Mirror.
Talk about the psychology of Black Mirror.
The work is done. What is there to... It's already a deep dive.
Yeah, the show is literally the analysis of everything we'd want to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about... we've got some upcoming plans. Do you want to discuss that now, Drea, or do you want to talk about that at the end of the show? Do you want to tease it now so that people stay for the end of the show?
They do not have to wait until the end of the show. I will simply say briefly that we will be at Comic-Con, and we have been... we've been scheduled. We're not really allowed yet to say when and where, but we will be at Comic-Con with a panel about mental health in writing. So how to create characters, narrative storytelling with mental health in mind. How are you building dynamic characters? What are the existing characters in our superhero comic sci-fi landscape that portray mental health in accurate, positive ways? So Batman, of course, comes to mind. Moon Knight comes to mind. Characters we've talked about here come to mind. And then we have some amazing guests on the panel who will talk about the ways in which they've developed their own original characters and stories and how they speak to consultants, usually me, but maybe others, who will help them shape out and build these complex individuals in their stories.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about who those guests are, or
I think we are allowed to mention that for sure.
Let's talk about that. So we've got one of our dear friends, one of the oldest friends that I have here in Los Angeles. That's Jeremy Adams, who is currently the writer for DC's Flash comic book. Then we've got another dear friend of ours, longtime friend Livio Remendelli, who is best known, I think, as the artist for IDW's Transformers comics, but just last year released his own creator-owned comic through IDW, again, diving into that robot world, but this one on a much deeper psychological level, partially because he actually consulted with you as he wrote, and that is called The Kill Lock. And then we've also got another dear friend of mine who actually used to work with me back when I produced the Power Ranger DVDs. And that's Melissa Flores, who is a brilliant storyteller in her own right. And she is releasing a comic in August called The Dead Lucky for Image. And we will be talking about that. You got an opportunity to read that one just recently as well, and have some amazing things to say about it. These are all people who think strongly and deeply about mental health as they write. And so we want to get them onto a panel to discuss it. We will let you know when that panel is as it gets a little closer and we are allowed to discuss it. That's after Comic-Con releases their schedule. But then we will also let you know about all the other panels Drea has committed to, because there are a ton. I think just about every day you've got something you're talking about. I think I have at least one a day.
Yeah,
so
it'll be fun.
It'll be fun. You want to talk about Star Wars, Drea? You want a Star War?
Let's talk about a Star War.
Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. This one is the third and final prequel to the trilogy we mostly grew up with. Although when we were at Star Wars Celebration, we saw a significant amount of love for the prequel trilogy. All those people who were growing up the same way we did with the original trilogy grew up with this one. This is their Star Wars. We got to respect that. And you know what? To be perfectly honest, I respect this trilogy. I don't necessarily like it, but I respect it. Because when you read the brilliant book, The Secret History of Star Wars, you learn that from day one, this is pretty much the story that George Lucas always wanted to tell. Always with federations and senates and trade routes and blockades and Mace Windu, then known as Mace Windy Jedi Bendu. This was really what George Lucas wanted to do his movie on. And the people around him told him, hey, trim the fat. Let's cut to that story there in the back half. And he did. And we ended up with Star Wars. And then, of course, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. But I have to respect that this is the story he always wanted to tell. So as far as I'm concerned, I happily make this canon, despite the fact that I don't love these three movies. You have a deep love of these movies, and I think this one holds a very specific place in your heart. Talk about that.
There's a couple of reasons. One is that I think, and this may be true for other listeners, how we came across or when in our lives Star Wars impacted us is hugely important. So I can't help but consolidate the narrative. How did this all matter to me, and how did it make me or impact who I am now? When I saw the original trilogy, of course I was young, and the original trilogy made sense to me from the perspective of, this young kid, this relatively insignificant guy on the farm has the power to become really impactful. He helps save the universe. It's a powerful story. I'm saying, at the time for me, that was meaningful. I was very young, and I'd even say that I may have been too young to really understand everything that was going on with this kid in relation to the Force, the mentorship, the spirituality, the faith, the belief, even the friendship. Like, it's about all those things. And it isn't until later in my life when I realize how that really shaped me. It's this original trilogy that has a very special place in the formation of my identity. And that's to say that not so much the first movie, but the second and third movie is about this other young guy, but somebody that I felt was more in my age range, somebody who I felt, Anakin's a little bit more my peer, in the sense that when we're seeing his journey, I'm about the same age, in the early 2000s. And the system fails him. His community fails him. His surroundings, his environment, they fail him. And
talk about that, though. I want to know, what do you mean by that? When you say that his community and the system fail him, dive a little deeper.
I don't
into
believe that this is a kid that's destined to be this evil, maniacal man / cybernetic villain. Darth Vader. I don't think that was destiny. I think that the myth and the expectations, the promise around this person supposedly having that destiny, bringing balance to the Force, which was kind of a bonkers idea, given that the Jedi were already incredibly powerful, and the Sith were not really.
They were in the shadows.
Not quite present, but nonetheless, this is some kind of predetermined destiny, right? The idea that it's his experiences and his lack of belongingness, his inability to really feel centered and present in his world is such a thing that I think a lot of young people feel. It's relatable. It's something that is almost universal. We're going to have times in our lives where we feel that sense of uniqueness, that sense of difference, that sense of search for identity formation, of course. And that's him. Now, I'm not saying that I felt so extremely rejected by peers, authority, society, etc., that it led me down a certain path. Quite the opposite. I learned how to find my identity and just really work through those internal feelings of being adrift, right? But this kid really goes through it. And again, it's when this movie occurred, like when they dropped episode 3, it was 2005. I definitely was waiting out in the, this is back when we still during the times when I think you can buy a ticket ahead of time, but you're still waiting in line. You don't have assigned seats. You're waiting in line, potentially dressed up in your Jedi robes overnight, maybe your Sith robes, your costumes, what have you. And that was a meaningful experience for me. So was it the highest quality Star Wars film? No. Does it lack a little bit of compassion and love and friendship? Absolutely. You get that from the original trilogy. You get the aspect of closeness and bonds and friendship. Those things really matter, right? And you get that from the first trilogy. What you get here, I believe, is a tragedy on a grand scale. This entire 3-part act is a tragedy.
That's interesting. I think you're absolutely right about the tragedy, but it's interesting that you create the parallel between the two trilogies, and you talk about how there was so much camaraderie between the characters in that first trilogy, meaning episodes 4, 5, and 6. Yes, Luke was separate from them on occasion, but always desperately did anything he could to get back to them and to reunite the group.
I mean, Luke is such a selfless, inevitably, he actually grows to be a selfless person. I'd say that Anakin is completely internal around his unmet needs.
Yeah.
How can I get what I want? Not how can I help my friends get through this tough time?
Right. So, but Anakin thinks he's being selfless, even though he's not. He thinks he's protecting Padme. He keeps having these dreams that he believes are premonitions of Padme dying in childbirth. She is, of course, pregnant with what we learn later will be twins.
Uba.
Twins, and he thinks that by joining Palpatine and the dark side, that he's going to learn some dark Sith magic that will help him keep her alive at all costs. I mean, she's not even started going through childbirth yet. He's just insistent upon doing this. And of course, it turns out to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, because what he's witnessing is actually her death of a broken heart. We'll talk about that later. I've got problems. But I want to go back to something that you were saying a few minutes ago. And I think it's connected to this idea of the family that first trilogy is centered on versus a very disconnected prequel. Everyone is being pulled away from one another in the prequels, and they're all being told to stay away from one another. And I hadn't necessarily put that piece of the poetry together until you just said that. I want you to talk a little bit about what you mentioned. The system let him down. The society let him down. Because when I look at Anakin Skywalker, I see an entitled brat who feels like he deserves everything, regardless of whether those around him feel he has earned it yet. And he gets very angry when he is not given the thing that he wants. And this is a kid who presumably should have come from very humble beginnings, having started out as a slave on Tatooine in Watto's shop. But he rises to this point of again, and I mentioned it before, he just seems entitled to me. But you say that the community around him has somehow let him down and driven him to this point. And I don't want you to defend that. I just want you to talk about what you mean.
Everything in this tragedy is an interaction.
Yeah.
It's almost an awful recipe. We have this youngling who I'd say carries a fair, normal amount of compassion and emotional elements kind of necessary and needed during those early phases. We see his relationship with his mother. This is in episode 1. There's a healthy caregiving happening between it's from her, and between them you have this fairly healthy attachment. You're not seeing some kid who's acting out, who's disorganized, who's angry, who seems to be avoidant and then also clingy. It seems to be, from what we see, a fairly healthy attachment. And then this is disrupted. He's taken willingly, of course, but he's taken by the Jedi to become a part of the society. And what we aren't really familiar with, what we don't see, is who is taking care of this kid. Mm-hmm. He has Obi-Wan, who is his Jedi mentor. Right?
And Obi-Wan even is so inexperienced at this point. I mean, he's literally just made a Jedi Knight at the end of Phantom Menace when he decides to take on this, what would be a youngling, as a Padawan.
But that's his dad.
Right.
That's not his mom. And I just mean, even one caregiver, somebody who's a committed parent to this kid, who's adopted him and is nurturing, fostering social emotional growth.
What would have been Qui-Gon.
Yeah. I mean, even that would be a little weird because it's like a Jedi master. I think I'm wondering, especially when we see these Padawan in those training rooms, where do they go at the end of the day? Like, what's the sitch? Are they like in a room full of beds, or is this kind of like a school? Is this an orphanage? Do they have various homes where they're with their families? How is this
Definitely
all
not families. I'm thinking dormitories with children. And Anakin's got a weird situation because he's not even technically a youngling. Like the moment that he is brought into the fold, despite being quote unquote too old to start his training, he has already made a Padawan for.
Right, so yeah.
Even his training is accelerated, maybe to an unhealthy degree by those around him.
And it's certainly over exaggerated or emphasized, this concept of becoming this Jedi Knight. Now, everything is fixated on this kid becoming this Jedi Knight. I don't know how much concern, attention, and fostering went into building him as simply a person, not necessarily a Jedi Knight, but a person.
Yeah.
Doesn't he say when he's a kid that he's a person?
Yeah.
So
I'm a person. My name is Anakin.
So already, and I kind of, even though we joke at that line, it kind of comes, how does that come full circle in a haunting way? He ends up being not a person.
Right. More machine than man.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is sort of upsetting in some ways. You have this kid now in episode 3. He's a young adult. He's married to Padme. And I ask, where along this training, this upbringing, this citizenship as a member of the Jedi, how did he develop what's needed around human alien social interaction that's helpful for his emotions? If anything, I see a young man who's disorganized emotionally, somebody who has very low distress tolerance. So when he's upset, he does not know how to manage or navigate those feelings, and so he lashes out. We talked in the last episode about someone who's a high conflict person, so I urge people to listen to that. Since we're not going to go over that again, but
he still is. You would say he still is. Yeah.
Not only that, but he's worsened. So he's turned from a high conflict person into someone with antisocial tendencies and behaviors.
I thought
right?
this was going in a different direction.
No, you got so excited. The look on your face.
So she's finally going to admit someone has antisocial tendencies. Oh.
And then when you look at his community, that's where I say, almost angrily, where were you? How did
riding a lizard, Drea? He was riding a lizard.
How did you contribute to both the ways in which this young kid is strong and resilient and loving, and also how he's irritable and frustrated and completely adrift? And that piece that I just want to mention that makes him so vulnerable to a predator, which I know we're going to talk about, is this weakened identity formation, that he's at this age should have some sense of himself, knowing who he is. There's that funny meme that you see Anakin looking out the window and he's like, I just want more. And it's kind of like, yeah, that's exactly who this kid is. He doesn't really know himself, but he struggles for more power. He struggles for more meaning. He has what we call a quest for significance. How can I be seen? Because I just feel so invisible. I'm wearing the Jedi robes. I had the Jedi braid. I had the Jedi hand. I have the
Jedi hand, as
Jedi
if they've all had them cut off.
But
this is part of a ceremonial
I
thing?
don't know, that we should definitely at some point talk about the hand, but the Jedi scar. I'm like, I put my time in, and yet I feel fragmented. I feel adrift. I feel unseen, and I'm angry. And that's a story that I think we listen to.
I want to ask you about Obi-Wan, and I want to play a little bit of audio here from the movie we had just seen, so Attack of the Clones, and then I also want to juxtapose it with a little piece of audio from this movie Revenge of the Sith. And I want you to talk a little bit about the differences between the two, and maybe it lends itself to your argument about society sort of having dropped the ball on the raising of Anakin. Here is the first clip. This is a little cute moment where Obi-Wan says, why do I get the feeling you're going to be the death of me? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And then
Cry.
Yeah, and then here's Anakin's response.
Why do I get the feeling you're going to be the death of me?
Don't say that, Master. You're the closest thing I have to a father.
Okay, so there's that. Now listen to this next bit. This is on Mustafar as Obi-Wan is yelling down at Anakin, insisting that this isn't how it was supposed to go and how much he loved him. Here we go. Let's take a listen to this.
You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you.
Okay, so there are these two pieces of audio. The distinguishing factor here is Anakin at one point viewed Obi-Wan as a father figure, or the closest thing he had to a father figure, but presumably Obi-Wan always sort of viewed their relationship as more sibling, more, maybe mentor, of course, but he was more of a brother. He never really saw himself as a father figure
certainly
to
Obi-Wan.
Anakin.
Yeah, I don't think he would kind of self-ascribe as a father figure,
right? But
to him. But notice
is that disparity there sort of where the system may have broken down as well.
Potentially.
That this relationship wasn't even grounded in the same foundation that maybe Anakin even needed to begin with.
I think that's an excellent point, because it's like, what are we doing here? Like, yeah. I look to you as a father figure, but this entire time you've seen yourself as somewhat of an older cousin, a big brother, a mentor.
Yeah.
And let me also fill in the gaps with the way that the Jedi teach emotion regulation, which isn't very healthy. Both the Sith and the Jedi have very extreme views on emotional expression, emotional experiences, and what to do when we have intense feelings. On the one hand, the Sith could be more, I don't know, I was going to say it could be more correct, could be more.
They say to let it out.
Yeah, I mean, I like the concept that if you have an intense feeling, you let that happen, you express it, you entertain it,
you feel it, you acknowledge it.
Yeah. And then, of course, the part of the Sith way that I don't agree with is, and then you let that channel your behavior, you let that channel your rage, your power, your unmet need in the world. Whereas the Jedi, and I think this is where we have these unmet needs around Anakin, having had a healthy parent, having had the correct, the healthy schema for what a caring parent would look like, is basically trying to imprint that on Obi-Wan. Mm-hmm. Like, I know what a loving parent should be. That's you now. Where is that? And for Obi-Wan to not really fulfill that is probably a struggle. Maybe he very much cares for Anakin. Maybe he feels this obligatory role to make sure that he's given instructions to kind of like correct him and direct him, instruct him, all those things, all of the teachings. But the Jedi way is not to have attachments. And of course, a parent-child pair, that dyad is inevitably an emotional attachment. And so I wonder if Obi-Wan at that point had struggled to work through that. I'm not supposed to feel a bond to you. I'm supposed to avoid and concretely separate myself from you so that we don't have this attachment together.
Yeah.
And I know folks have really, folks who are listening in particular, I know would have, maybe could tell us there are some deeper teachings around the Jedi way, and that it might be more complex than what I'm saying, because I know a lot of folks can find good in the Jedi teachings around emotional intelligence. But I've written about this recently in an article around mindfulness. I find a lot of helpful ways that the Jedi concepts can work for us. But it's here, this lack of attachment and this avoidance or dismissive nature around negative emotions that can get them into trouble. And I think it did.
I love what you just said. Yeah, I almost feel sorry for Obi-Wan, because here's a kid who just literally finished his training, graduated to the level of Jedi Knight, and is instantly thrust upon with this kid who's now his Padawan, who now has to learn from him. And he's not someone he ever asked for. He's not someone who Obi-Wan, I'm sure, thought he was destined for great things, having come from the lineage of Qui-Gon and Yoda and all of that. And now suddenly he's got this kid to turn into the chosen one.
Yeah,
you know,
and this
Obi-Wan
kid
has the pressure of training the kid who is prophesized to be the chosen one.
And by the way, this kid is already problematic.
Yeah.
By the way, this kid is irritating people. By the way, this kid is offensive. By the way, this kid is rebellious. He won't get in line. He's too old. He's too this, he's too that. Certainly, I feel like Obi-Wan, and we see this in a few places. We see this on Disney Plus,
which we haven't seen yet. We haven't seen yet. We're not allowed to talk about that.
We've seen this in this film, where Obi-Wan has a deep sense of responsibility for the aftermath, the inevitably what happens to Anakin. I don't think at all that Obi-Wan walks away from that and gets the sense that Anakin got what he deserved. I feel like Obi-Wan is intrinsically, emotionally wrapped up in that. He cannot disentangle his responsibility, his sense of some contribution to the fall of Anakin Skywalker.
Could I ask a little bit, though, about, since we just played this audio from Mustafar, and because you're talking about the fall of Anakin, and he didn't necessarily get what he deserved, but, you know, and look, before the comments all start, I know that the story demands that Anakin Skywalker survive. But how cold is it that Obi-Wan cuts his legs off, yells at him, chastises him, cries, watches the kid slide into fire, be burned alive, and he just walks away? He doesn't even go over there and put him out of his misery. He just, what's worse? Would it have been, look, old friend, I'm gonna go ahead and end this for you now, or I'm just gonna go walk away and let you extinguish yourself as you scream.
I have an explanation that you may not be satisfied with.
Okay,
but this is traumatic. Of course, for Anakin, he's he's burning to death, and his limbs have been.
He's losing midichlorians by the second.
It's traumatic to watch. The first time I saw it, I was just shocked. Do you when you first saw this scene, we knew that something horrible would happen to this young man. Mm-hmm. Horrible in the sense of he loses who he is as Anakin and turns into Darth Vader, and this really gives us a visceral sense of that dehumanization, the disfigurement, the violence involved. Mm-hmm. And it's Obi-Wan who is forced to that point, but he willingly does it. He tells him that he has the higher ground and he knows he's going to strike. The only way that I can make sense of it in one or two ways, but the trauma of this is happening to Anakin, but it's also happening to Obi-Wan. So the trauma of this means that he too is going to sudden fight, freeze, or
Oh, so it's a like a fight, freeze, or flight situation where he.
yeah, it's actually 4. It's this is why I paused for a moment, because I was saying them in a weird order. But it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. The 4 Fs.
What is a fawn?
Oh,
I mean, I know what a fawn is,
yeah,
but what does
well,
it
you
mean
know the
to
first
fawn?
2. So the first 3 we're good on, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, fighting is getting aggressive and
Right.
doubling down on the actual fight, defending yourself, basically. The flee is avoidance, escape, run, right?
Right.
Freeze is a physiological and neurobiological reaction where sometimes unwillingly you just freeze
up. Yeah.
But fawn is the trauma reaction where you actually, like if like a little deer, if you've ever seen videos, if you've ever seen a fawn, videos of small animals, maybe they're being chased by a predator and they suddenly just collapse and you're like, what just happened? And then moments later they would spring back up and then run away.
Sure.
So that is kind of a fainting
They're
response.
literally goats who do that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Some goats don't do it because of trauma, but this is in the height of a physiological reaction. The body not only shuts down, but has this sort of passive fainting response.
Yeah. That's what the goats do. Is they freeze up. They
and
literally
then
like
they just pass out.
and they like fall down. Like they like die.
And so when you
then
hear,
get back up.
When you hear trauma survivors say, I didn't remember certain parts, or especially when you hear trauma survivors say, I fainted, I passed out, I lost sense of consciousness. I don't know. It was really kind of disoriented. In many ways, that's a protective mode, because what's happening in the moment is incredibly horrific, shocking, dehumanizing to them, that the body kind of has that reaction. So look, what I'm saying about Obi-Wan is that it's likely his reaction was an intense traumatic response, that he knew in the midst of fighting that he would likely have to kill this young kid. I think this was in his mind throughout the whole Mustafar fight. But at the end realized, I've done it. And he sort of walks away in horror.
But he didn't do it. He didn't do it.
I mean, he did. I think he believes that he's killed him.
Yeah. Okay. We need to talk a little bit about Padme for a second, because I feel like this is maybe the most underserved character potentially in the Star Wars universe. Like this is literally a person who was created just to be the object of desire for Anakin. This is a person who was created to be the mother of Luke and Leia. She's extremely strong on paper, but there's very little that comes out of it. Like her struggle, it's a very real problem where very strong people can't quite get the change that they fight so hard for. But then she dies of a broken heart. The robot even explains, the droid, even explains that there's nothing physically wrong with her. She's just lost the will to live. And despite the fact that she's just given birth to 2 children that, presumably she would have loved and been happy with, and, all that, she just can't go on because Anakin has broken her heart beyond all repair. And this just seems sort of ill-fitting to me.
It's ill-fitting or unlikely. I can see in ill-fitting, like what harmful, I don't know, objectifying way to handle a female character. Like you've done all this,
so
and
strong.
once you've given birth to these kids, you're done.
Well, and not just that. It's not even that so much as she was written to be such a wonderfully strong character. She was basically the Princess Leia of this trilogy. And then the moment that a man made her sad, she died. Like it's
Like
just,
she couldn't handle.
She just couldn't handle
she couldn't
it.
handle it. I'm with you 1,000%.
You know, and someone had commented on something we talked about with Attack of the Clones, and they had corrected us and let us know that, you know, per the novelization, Padme during Phantom Menace was supposed to be 15, while Anakin was supposed to be 9. So there's just a 6-year difference there. It's still a weird difference. But by the time we got to Attack of the Clones, that 6-year difference isn't so bad because he's 18, 19, 20, whatever. And she's 26 or, you know, and so everything should be fine there. But my point all along isn't the age difference per se. It's the fact that she was elected to be queen of a planet at the age of 15. You know, they refer to her as the newly elected queen of Naboo. She has lived an adult life a lot longer than he.
So you're saying that maturity levels are very different here.
Are off the charts.
She is so much more mature, and he's this like young piece of Jedi ass that isn't quite at her level yet with lived experience.
You know, and Mama needs what she needs, but and I'm not suggesting that she can't like the young Jedi, but at the same time, it is weird that the one dude you latched onto was the 9-year-old that you remember from 10 years ago.
And that's what did you in.
Yeah. That's, by the end of that movie, you're going to be secretly wed to this dude. You don't even really know him. I mean, even over the course of this movie, you've only gone on like one date with him where you frolicked in some grass. And
no, they
jumped off
stayed together. They were there for a period of time because.
But the period of time isn't that long. Like they and then they split up because he does his adventure, she does her adventure. She gets caught, he gets caught. You know, it's weird. Yeah. It's weird.
From the perspective, and this is quick, but from the perspective of the likelihood of her dying from a broken heart, there are circumstances. There's medical case studies around this. There are people that have passed away from incredible grief and loss.
Yeah.
They are typically older in age, where something like this would be incredibly unlikely.
Yeah, it's those cases of the people who pass away, the week after their husband or wife or spouse of 50 years had also been, had also passed away, and people romanticize that sort of thing. But this kid turned evil, started killing children, and you know it, and maybe that is maybe that's the trigger. Maybe it's the moment where it's like, wow. I have literally been in love with the worst human being, and I have
no other choice but to just die.
Really don't think I can go on any further.
But I think you're right. That narrative is such a disservice to her as a character. So we've got to talk about what leads to the atrocities that happen at the Jedi Temple and the eventual darkness.
I want to get your take on that too, because I was actually sent a text that was in response to our Attack of the Clones narrative, but we were mentioning the fact that mental health doesn't lead you to these atrocities. You know, it's not because you have a mental illness that suddenly you're going to pick up a gun or a lightsaber and kill a bunch of younglings. But the text was basically asking for an explanation for the people who do get up and as individuals leave their homes either with a gun and go and shoot up a church or a school or a mosque, or get behind the wheel of a car and drive through a crowd of people, or go and vandalize communities or churches or whatever. And what drives them, because it seems to be motivated by something different than groups of people and factions of people. Whereas I don't necessarily agree or disagree. You know, there's no such thing as a lone gunman, and you know, those people are constantly being radicalized online by various websites or various news channels or whatever. They are getting their information somehow, and they are becoming so deeply rooted in a belief system that eventually drives them to the point where they feel like they need to do something because no one else will. And I have to equate that again, as we've said in the past, to like this sort of cult-like movement. It's ideologies. It's a cult leader. In this case, it would be Palpatine, who has managed to find a weakness, a vulnerability in this young person, Anakin, and he manipulates it to the point that he poisons Anakin's mind with such a deeply rooted belief that what they are doing is right or the only way to proceed. And Anakin then just goes off the deep end. And we've seen, you know, Drea, we've watched documentaries that are startling where people say, and they ask psychologists, how can a sane person get into a cult? How can a person how can they not see themselves as victims of this and this and this? And those psychologists are all like, oh, no, let me tell you, some of the most intelligent people can actually find themselves in a cult.
All of us.
Right.
We said this on the show before.
Yeah.
All of us can be susceptible to getting indoctrinated by a cult. But let me take a step back and mention two concepts that I think are really important before we even go there around Anakin Skywalker. Okay. The concepts are about how did we get here? So I may have mentioned this on the show before, but let me just say multifinality. Multifinality is basically the idea that there are multiple outcomes to some shared experiences. So you and I could have had a very similar childhood trauma, and there might be multiple outcomes to how we grow up and find our final psychological state. The very same event could lead to, or very similar events could lead to multiple outcomes.
Sure.
In the case of Anakin, I just want to underscore the opposite of that. That's equifinality. So this is the concept that means that a given psychological state, in this case, Anakin completely going berserk, for lack of a professional word right now, that's the result of varying past experiences, or that could be the result of varying past experiences, which is to say that we're about to talk about Anakin's experience or various experiences resulting in this incredibly antisocial, violent person, someone willing to pick up a lightsaber and, just destroy a bunch of children's
genocide.
lives. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. In this case, yes, attempted genocide because they're trying to destroy all the Jedi.
Yeah.
While we talk about Anakin, I need to, it's a professional responsibility to say that based on what we know around equifinality, there are multiple experiences that could lead to this outcome. So in this circumstance, we're specifically identifying the ways in which this young kid, as we've mentioned, was isolated, didn't have appropriate caregivers, was pretty much neglected, was misdirected, didn't have healthy identity formation. So he's depressed, he's upset, he's frustrated about who he is. He doesn't yet know how he has to fulfill, or what he needs to do to fulfill his destiny, or rather the Jedi's destiny. And so that actually makes him, as I said before, this is a recipe that makes him vulnerable to a predator noticing his unmet needs, noticing his vulnerability, noticing that he's feeling adrift, down, depressed, And this is the time to recruit him. So a cult member or a cult leader, I'm using that phrase very loosely here in terms of Star Wars, is able to notice that he needs a clear-cut identity because he has yet to have a prescription for living. And who comes along? It's Palpatine, this soft-spoken, elderly, powerful, robe-wearing gentleman who seems to have all the answers. And this is super enticing. And this is how, generally speaking, a cult leader can recruit a vulnerable would-be member. This idea that they can kind of use a bunch of tactics, little behavioral tactics, to get their interest. This includes things like isolating that person, so kind of cutting them off from the relationships that they have. And we kind of see that with him making sure Anakin feels kind of disgraced and disconnected from the Jedi. There's a bit of love bombing. You know what love bombing is? It's kind of like giving you showering you with attention and compliments, affirmations, the things that you did not get or you do not get from the people who are supposedly your supporters. So, notice that you get to sit right next to the Chancellor at that weird opera thing.
And he sends everybody else away.
And he's like, everyone else go away. Like you and I are going to have just a one-on-one conversation. It's intimate. It's private. It is affirming for Anakin. It makes him feel special. The things that the Jedi Council are certainly not doing for him. And there's a little bit of grooming, which I think, depending on how you look at this, Anakin's a little bit older here, but there is some sense of grooming where
he's older for sure physically, but again, I think when we talk about maturity, he's still stuck somewhere in his childhood. He's
a really good point.
So he emotionally he's still.
Yeah. So grooming, no matter what age, but grooming usually starts a little bit younger. But this starts with kind of, as I said, separating or creating distance between the victim and their family members, gaining the target's trust, breaking down their defenses. We see a little bit of that with the emotional pressure, the physical pressure. So he's kind of trying to break down Anakin's defenses, manipulating them. And in this example, it's a sociopolitical indoctrination. It's sort of like, how do I get you to believe in my politics and my worldviews in order for me to get what I want, and I'm going to abuse your ability to use the Force, because he knows that he's strong with the Force. He knows Anakin's strong in the Force,
right? And
that sort of creates this relationship that's incredibly toxic. So that emotional abuse, I think, is important as we consider. Now, it happens quickly, but that emotional abuse is the antecedent, right? It's the trigger for these things that Anakin's about to do. That emotional abuse includes favoritism, there's ego stroking, there's threatening him, there's some gift giving, again, how do I make you feel special? And it's interesting when people talk about surviving a cult and kind of like coming out the other side, they start to notice these things really directly, really overtly, and they didn't realize that it was happening at the time.
Yeah, like when we look at the documentaries on like Nexium and the other, we've watched a number of them over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
They all have those people who got out who are like, God, now that I look back at this. And then you've got some people who still wish they had stayed I mean, you've got people who still
course.
sort of feel like, this is the most special they ever.
You look at some of the most extreme ones, right, where they are, they're basically like out in these desolate areas where they're kept from full resources.
You look at Heaven's Gate.
Oh my gosh, like not being able to eat regularly, being worked day and night, feeling exhausted all the time. That fatigue is intentional. That fatigue is meant to put somebody in this kind of disoriented state of mind. They have a willingness to obey. They have a willingness to kind of like give in to the cult leader. And then all of that affirmation and love, I'm using that in air quotes here, that comes from that cult leader is like drinking out of a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, of course you're thinking of going back.
And the most important thing we should say that Palpatine does to Anakin, in addition to simply showing him the affection that he never got and making him feel special, he basically encourages him to feel his emotions, particularly when it comes to attachments with other people.
Can you play that piece with where he talks about Darth Plagueis?
Yeah, you want the whole story? I've got the story, and I've got the what it means to.
I think what it means, because so the story of Darth Plagueis is that there was this powerful Sith Lord who learned how to use the Force so expertly. He was so good at this, he was able to even manipulate life and death, so he could kind of extend his own life, keep himself alive, and even keep other people from dying. That is, until his number one attacks him and kills him, and I believe that is meant to be Darth Sidious, aka Palpatine, and Darth Plagueis, I suppose, was his mentor.
Right. So let's take a listen to what this all means.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
What happened to him?
He became so powerful. The only thing he was afraid of was losing his power, which eventually, of course, he did. Unfortunately, he taught his apprentice everything he knew. Then his apprentice killed him in his sleep. It's ironic. He could save others from death, but not himself.
Is it possible to learn this power?
Not from a Jedi.
And by the way, we never know. We're never told that Palpatine is the apprentice.
There is a book that comes out later called Darth Plagueis.
There's always a book.
There's
always some book
take
someone
it or leave
wrote.
It goes through Darth Sidious being his apprentice, and in accordance with the rule of two, ends up killing his own mentor. I mean, if I knew about the rule of two, I would definitely not get into one of these dyads, because it would be like one of us isn't going to make it.
Right.
Because the second there's another potential mentor or mentee, one of us got to go.
Well, and that's so. Let me ask you about the psychology of Palpatine at this point. Is it the end? At the end of the movie, Palpatine feels that Anakin might be in danger. And he gets on board his ship and he flies to Mustafar. He shows up just as Anakin's basically dousing himself and writhing around in pain. Palpatine instructs his soldiers to pick Anakin up and put him in a Bacta tank sort of thing. Now, here's the question. Is he just so invested at this point that he needs to keep Anakin alive as Darth Vader, like to give him the robot legs and the the big suit and all that, or does he still see that this is the dude?
Him.
Like, this is still the dude that can.
Yeah, I think he needs him because remember Count Dooku, who is a lovely character. We have not talked about him enough, but Count Dooku at this point has literally been beheaded by Anakin.
At the command of Palpatine.
Yeah, rule of two. Right. So because of that,
he doesn't have anybody in the wings,
Anakin
so he's like,
is kind of his only hope.
you're all I can, until Luke comes along when he sees the opportunity, the potential for a new apprentice.
Yeah. So I think it's a matter of like, do we have the ability to save this guy?
I just wish I could get into the mind of Palpatine. I'm sure there's a book on it. In that moment where he's just like, oh God, look at him. All right.
There could be a sense of
take him to my back to take. Oh God, I put all my chips down on this kid. He must have been so disappointed.
He may have felt, now going back to attachments and father figures, he is now Anakin's father figure. And he put a lot of work.
That's what I'm saying. Is he too invested? Yeah,
he is.
Because I don't think he sees himself as his father figure.
No, not necessarily.
He would sacrifice that dude in a heartbeat.
Right. And I guess what I'm saying is that maybe there's this sense that, at least on Anakin's charred self, is like, he actually did believe that this older mentor would protect him.
Yeah.
And that would teach him these ways to utilize the Force in I guess I'd say in a practice that the Jedi refused to tell him about. So Anakin has those expectations and will continue to have those expectations. And so maybe together there's enough expectation that they'll likely both continue to be attached in some way. Mm-hmm. And on Palpatine's side, maybe there's enough there. Maybe there's enough expectation there to save him. And maybe all along he's had that helmet aside, like waiting, at what point does this kid become my Darth Vader?
What if that was Darth Plagueis's helmet all along?
That would be awesome.
He's like, oh, I still have it. Take it out of the closet. Give it to him. Perfect.
And let's maybe not play the very last thing that Darth Vader says at the end of the film, but
if you stick around till the end of the podcast, you will probably hear that very last thing.
But
can we talk about that manipulation though?
But that's exactly, yes. It continues to happen where Palpatine lies to him. The first thing on Anakin's mind after recovering from all these injuries and becoming this cybernetic, completely covered being. Now, why have a cape? I guess they all have capes. I guess all the Sith Lords have capes.
I mean, you gotta have a cape.
That doesn't seem as functional as the other parts, but he's in this suit. He's his breathing. He's in this apparatus, and the first thing on his mind is actually Padme. It's not, am I going to be okay? Is Padme okay?
Yeah.
And the response, of course, is, well, you've killed her.
Sorry, bud, you killed her.
Which is not necessarily
untrue.
I'd say it's a half truth, but the way that's delivered is so devastating, and he knows it.
By the way, could we talk about the incredibly in your face homage to Frankenstein's monster?
Yeah, I loved it.
In this moment, you loved it?
Oh my gosh, of course.
This was something you loved?
I did.
Coming back from the dead, having the new parts and pulling the restraints off the bed, not being able to use his knees as he walks, and then going, no. Oh wait, no, we're not going to play that yet. So then I'm on the right track where we are looking at basically a cult of like a political cult, a socio-political cult, a sort of a leader.
I mean, if you're just talking about
indoctrinating a kid.
Palpatine, I think we're honing in on the Palpatine Anakin relationship. The likelihood that this mentor can tell this kid, now you're going to go to the temple and you're going to kill all those Padawans and you're going to kill any Jedi that you see.
Yeah, and that's
that amount of power. So yes, of course, who's the one with the lightsaber? It's Anakin. He's willing. And let me just name a couple of things that have already happened. Novel aggression. We've talked about this on the show before. Novel aggression. So this is the experimentation with acting out on your anger and frustration and your feelings of being isolated. That novel aggression has already happened when Anakin raided the Tuscans and destroyed that village because of what happened to his mother. So he's already past the point where he knows that he has the capability for violence, a willingness for violence. He's past that point. There's little resistance there. Not everybody gets to that point. Now, remember, as I said, there has to be a lot of factors here for this to be the outcome. Now you've got this mentor who has manipulated him, groomed him, offered him this power, dangled the offering of invincibility and transcending death, right? So this kid believes it, and he goes on to harness these fixed beliefs, to take his lightsaber, to take his weapons, and to destroy the people that he now believes are against him. He now believes this set of people, the Jedi, the robed people in particular, he now believes that all of those people need to die.
And let's take us back to the moment where this happened, because really, and this is where I think you're absolutely right when you say society sort of broke down and let him down. It's the moment where Mace Windu is arresting Palpatine, and Anakin comes in and sees that Palpatine has been bested, and Mace decides, I should just kill this guy because he's way too powerful and we just need to end it here and now. Anakin actually fights for what's right. He says, no, you can't kill him. He has to stand trial. He turns against Palpatine. So even after the promise of saving Padme and all that, Anakin has not fully bought in until he sees the aggression of the Jedi who is willing to kill Palpatine. And that's when he gets himself a little too deep. He stops the attempt at killing Palpatine by cutting off yet another Jedi's arm. he cuts off Mace's arm.
I told you, got to get that Jedi arm.
But now here's the thing. And this is the part that I just find I have a hard time reconciling. Palpatine then uses his Force lightning on Windu and throws him out the window and screams ultimate power. And this is the moment that Anakin buys in, because he now feels like whoops, I'm now responsible for the death of Mace Windu, so I need to now.
This is the
I'm
point.
On the lam.
This is the point of no return,
right,
for him.
But how did it get to that point?
I think it also has a lot to do with some of the elements I mentioned before around recruitment of new cult members. He has already been emotionally and physically exhausted through this. Anakin is just completely outside himself. He's emotionally drained. He's disoriented. He's not necessarily thinking clearly, and that's where the most impact can happen. That's when the most impact can happen around indoctrination. So I think that makes a lot of sense from the perspective of this being the final grab of Anakin and his psychology and the point of no return. From here on out, he can't look back.
Right.
He only has these set of fixed beliefs to rely on. And now he's determined, because if he's wrong, look at all of the laid waste, right? So he has to almost double down here.
Yeah. Wow. All right. A lot to talk about. So you love this movie even more now than you did even the first time?
You know, I'd say that what made me appreciate this movie was seeing it with the Obi-Wan show and noticing, especially between Anakin and Obi-Wan, that torn relationship. Mm-hmm. And I believe him when Obi-Wan tells him that he was like a brother to him. It's partly because Ewan McGregor is such a great actor, and I think he's great for this role. You see this come up later, where
no, we don't. We haven't seen it yet.
But let me just fix.
Vote if you want to hear the next thing Drea has to say.
Let me just fixate on the end of this third film, that showing of love and connection that he has with him. Mm-hmm. Had that only happened sooner, I'm not blaming Obi-Wan. I'm not saying that he could have corrected this. I'm not saying he could have prevented this. Mm-hmm. But that showing of expressed emotion, that is such an important milestone for Obi-Wan, because I think he too is realizing that's his point of no return. Mm-hmm. I'm wrapped up in this. I have devoted a lot of my life to this young kid, and I feel I failed him.
Right.
But he chose his path.
Right.
I cannot say more about that right now, but I think that's riveting, and I think that's what makes this film, even on its own, an important one in the Star Wars landscape.
Yeah. Vote over at Patreon if you want to hear our analysis of the new Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney Plus. And then after that, we will talk about Solo. So either Solo or Obi-Wan will be next in line. I can tell you're excited already about revisiting Solo. Now you've got that.
I don't
you got
remember.
That look. That's what I'm saying.
That
Is
look
like there's no way.
I feel like I wiped that movie from my brain.
There's no way you remember. Well, you do that. You wipe movies from your brain, which makes it that much more fun to show them to you again later. Until next time, Dre, why don't you tell the folks where they can find you online?
They can find me on social media at Arkham Asylum Doc and on my website, drdreapsychology.com.
You can find me online on Twitter at bward028, on Instagram at b_ward028. You can find us both on Twitter at Arkham Sessions and on Instagram at The Arkham Sessions. Come find us on Facebook, join Patreon, and go say hello to our family over at Fanbase Press. Until next time, I'm Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Drea Letamendi.
And together we are
The Arkham Sessions.